and thank you. My name is Heidi Schwab, and I'm the program coordinator at the Hoboken Library. And excuse me, I find this topic very interesting about whether you should send your kids to college during COVID. I have 2 kids. I sent them to college. It was very expensive, to say the least. We see a lot in the news about younger children going back to school, which of course is very important, but I haven't seen a lot on this topic. And this is huge, you know, whether you should send your kid back to school or not, or maybe have them work in Starbucks for a year and get that experience. So actually, I've known Monique a really long time, and I know that she knows everything about college. So I invited her to give this presentation on this really relevant topic. So thank you, Monique. And thank you, Dr. Lutri, for joining us and getting the medical advice as well. Will our kids be safe if we send them back to college? Okay, so I think I'm ready to start. Monique, would you want to start?
Yeah, do you want to introduce us, or do you want me to just dive right in?
Okay, I don't have it in front of me, I should. Monique Rinere is a former college dean in Harvard, Princeton, and Columbia, and among other things, also I think a vice president at the New School. There isn't anything Monique doesn't know about sending your kid to college. She's also the author of numerous books on the topic, so we welcome her. And Monique, would you please introduce Dr. Lutri for us?
Yes, I certainly will. Dr. Tom Lutri has had a wealth of experience, not only as a physician, but as a CEO of several healthcare firms. And he and I are both practicing psychotherapists in Manhattan. And Tom, if you would like to say anything else about yourself, go ahead.
No, that's fine. Thank you.
Great. All right. Thank you everyone for being here, and thank you Heidi for introducing us and for inviting us to do this program. And thank you to the Hoboken Library, which seems like a beehive of community activity. Normally, I would be talking to parents at this time of year about very different things. I would normally be talking about the things I wrote about in my book, Countdown to College, which is designed to help parents help their children transition successfully to college. But this year, before we can talk about the usual stuff, we have to talk about whether or not students should go to campus or attend college at all. So what I'm hoping is that in the next 20 minutes or so, and then we'll leave plenty of time for questions, that we will offer you some constructive ways of thinking about what to do about college and COVID-19. The main questions are here. Should your child go to college? If so, how, in person or online? And if not, what should they do instead? Parents who are asking themselves these questions are not alone. The parents of our country's over 20 million college students are all asking themselves the same question. Davidson College in North Carolina did a very clever thing. If you're not aware of it, I would check it out. They got a grant very quickly to create this thing called the College Crisis Initiative. And on their website, they have a map of the United States, and they have a little dot for each college over almost 3,000 colleges, and indicates whether they are fully in person, fully online, or somewhere in between. If you take a look at the map, you'll quickly see that even colleges in one geographic location have wildly different plans. And only 2.5% of our nation's colleges have decided at this point that they are going to be fully in person, and only 5% have decided to be fully online. And some of those are already fully online institutions. So that means over 90% of schools either are doing some sort of hybrid or haven't decided yet. Oops, sorry. I don't know what happened. Oh, I clicked on the, sorry about that. Okay, my apologies. I'm not sure what you all saw there.
See
Anyway.
the college crisis initiative
Oh,
slide.
you still see it? Okay,
That's what we're seeing.
great. Thank you. All right, so the answer to the question of whether a child should go to college or not depends on three factors: the college or university's plan, your child, and you. I'm going to take each of these separately. I'm going to give Dr. Lutri a chance to chime in at the end of each of the three sections. And as I said, I hope to leave plenty of time for questions. So first, we're going to talk about the colleges. You can be sure that every single college has spent the entire summer trying to figure out how to continue educating students while keeping them safe and keeping their doors open. Colleges have been hit dramatically financially. And so for many of these colleges, they need to open their doors so that they can keep running. Thousands of hours have been spent with no small amount of hand-wringing trying to figure this out, the best solution for each individual college community. The CDC has chimed in. They have helped with a bunch of guidelines and recommendations. If you haven't familiarized yourself with them, they are available on their website. But if I were a parent, what I would want to know first and foremost is how are they going to quarantine all of these students arriving onto campus? Let's say you have a college like Columbia University, which has about 30,000 students. Even if they welcome back only half of their undergraduates and half of their graduate students, let's say, that's still 15,000 people arriving in Upper Manhattan who have to be quarantined. How are they going to quarantine safely, and how is the school going to ensure that they quarantine safely? Also, how frequently are they testing? Are they testing just people who go into the dorms, or are they testing people who go into every building every day? Finally, the geographic location and what's happening with the virus in each location is extremely important, but we also know that that can change pretty quickly. The second thing I would want to know is how are they housing students? Are they having one student per room and per bathroom? How are they feeding everyone, and how densely populated will the classes be? And not only that, but how are they going to clean the dorms, the dining halls, and the classrooms frequently enough? Some examples of what's going on in our country: Johns Hopkins in Baltimore, Maryland, and Princeton in Princeton, New Jersey, both had decided to bring back 2 undergraduate classes and their graduate students for the fall semester. I think one of them was going to do freshmen and juniors for the fall and sophomores and seniors for the spring, or something like that. Anyway, on Friday they announced they are going fully online because the risk is too great. I'll give you some insight into why that is in a minute. On the other end of the spectrum is this lovely little college in Georgia called Andrew College. They are dedicated to going fully in person. They have extensive health and safety precautions, as you can imagine, but they are a college of 300 students on a 40-acre campus. So space has a lot to do with it. Marymount Manhattan College on Manhattan's Upper East Side, I think, has come up with a brilliant solution. They are going to teach fully online, but they are going to open their facilities for their students. So the dance and art students can use the studios, the drama students can use the theaters, the science students can use the labs, and students who either don't want to stay home or can't stay home because they don't have a nice place to study, or they don't get along with their parents, or the home doesn't have any Wi-Fi, can choose to go live in their dorms in a very safe way. So I think that their solution was actually pretty ingenious. And then another couple questions I would ask myself are, where will the sick students be housed? Students are going to get sick. Some colleges have decided to make arrangements with local hospitals. Some have set aside some dorms for this purpose, and yet others have contracted with hotels so that those sick students can be housed there. And then, of course, how are they going to be fed while they're there until they can go back to the campus safely? At this point, I'll ask Dr. Lutri if he has any input here.
Sure. Well said, Monique. The only thing I would like to stress, what you pointed out, is where is the college? For instance, New York and New Jersey, Connecticut, this tri-state area, we're doing very good with the virus. Only about 1 to 2% of people tested for the virus turn up to be positive in this area. In other areas of the country, the virus is still hasn't been there that long. It's spreading like crazy. Those areas are probably not as safe. And as Monique said, this is all subject to change. Things could change very quickly. And that's all I have to say about that.
Thanks, Dr. Lutri.
You're welcome.
There are some additional considerations that I want to share with you. One is that the faculty and the staff on most campuses do not want to go back to campus. They've been working from home since March in this part of the country. And the nature of tenure is such that you really can't force a tenured faculty member to do anything they don't want to do. And many faculty, graduate students, and staff are members of powerful unions. And so part of what's going on this summer on college campuses is that administrators are negotiating with the unions to see whether or not there is a safe way, whether they will allow their employees to come back to campus in the fall. So that is a very big one. In fact, many colleges have been surveying their faculty to see if they would come back. So faculty have a very strong voice in this decision. Also, you can't deny that colleges are built for interaction. Campus architects build buildings to enhance collaboration, a sense of belonging, a means of interacting. And now the campus has to be sort of used differently to keep people apart. It's very difficult for colleges to do this. The final note I have about students going back to college campuses with respect to what the campus offers is, you know, a lot of colleges are laying people off and furloughing people. And I know of one college at least that has now laid off all of their mental health staff. So one question I would be very eager to ask is, what proactive and responsive programs and resources are available to help students if they do go to campus? Going to college is stressful in and of itself, but add to it that we have a period of social unrest, an economic downturn, and a global pandemic, and most students are going to need some mental health support. In fact, in normal times, 1 out of 2 students asks for some sort of mental health support during their 4 years of college. And so I imagine that this could only go up during the current conditions. Above all, I would say that make sure that all of your questions are answered to your satisfaction. Don't be shy, don't hesitate to ask more, and above all, get the names of people you can call. Colleges are notoriously hard to pin down with respect to names and phone numbers, but once you get them, you hang on to them because you might be able to use them during the semester. The best way to approach a college is always like a partnership. All of the people on campus want to see each and every student succeed. In fact, people work at colleges because they are invested in the education of young people, the future leaders of tomorrow. And so I wouldn't hesitate to reach out to any of the people on campus that you see on this list and beyond, because everyone is a source of potential assistance and advice. Above all, if your child does go to campus this semester, I would get the phone number and the email of the crisis management person. Sometimes it's called a dean of students. So find out who's in charge of crisis management, and anytime you have a concern, you can get in touch with them. Every dean of students will hate me for saying that, but it's super important. So that's what I have to say about the college aspect of it. The next aspect is your child. Much of the answer to the question of what your kid should do this fall has to do with your child, who they are as an individual and their stage of development. So I'm just going to talk about 4 factors that I think are helpful in getting us to think about this. I know it's really difficult to see one's own child objectively, but in order to assess their preparedness to make a major change in their lives, I think it's really important to pay attention to each of these. So I'm just going to say a quick word or 2 about each of these 4 things. So what is resilience? Resilience is the capacity to recover quickly from difficulties. It's a measure of our toughness. So let's say something knocks us over, and how quickly do you snap back? That's how resilient you are. Resilient students are going to do better in this situation going to college than non-resilient students. Also, we know that teenagers are in a constant state of development, and the way they relate to authority figures and rules changes over these years. So if your child is in a particularly rebellious stage, for them to be in a situation where they need to obey rules and follow guidelines they may not understand or they may not like may be key to their ability to stay healthy on campus. Also, what is the state of their mental and physical health? This is really a time to be honest as possible about what your child's mental and physical health needs are. Whatever they are, I always recommend, even in normal times, that parents let the college know what the child's needs are, because there's no use in hiding them. This is a time to be as honest with yourself, the child, and your college as possible. And then, finally, how good is your child at asking for help? When people ask me what is one of the biggest issues for college students these days, I sound like such an old fogey saying that, I say that they don't ask for help in a timely way. If they can ask for help in a timely way, and they realize that asking for help is a sign of wisdom and maturity, not a sign of weakness, then they can avail themselves of the support network that is really thick on campuses. Medical, psychological, disabilities, RAs, faculty, et cetera, et cetera. Everybody there, as I said, is there to help each individual student succeed in the way that they define success. All right, Dr. Lutri, now as I wrap up the part about the student, do you have anything to add?
That was covered very well, Monique. That's fine. Nothing to add.
Thanks. All right, finally, the third aspect of this is you. And this is key for parents out there. 4 quick factors I want to discuss with respect to parents. The answer to the question of what your child should do this semester has to do with your pocketbook, your proximity to the college, your and your family's health, and your faith in your child. Again, I'm going to quickly go through some thoughts on these things. We all know that college is expensive, and maybe your financial situation has changed. So, 4 questions to ask yourselves. What is your level of tolerance for paying tens of thousands of dollars for a fully or partially online experience? I know that Heidi Schwab, I know what her answer would be. 2 is, what is your level of tolerance for paying tens of thousands of dollars knowing that your child might get sick or the college might close and things could end up in the same way we did in March? 3rd, what is the refund policy of the college? Most of them write refund policies so that you really get 0 refund after 4th or 5th week of the semester, so pay attention to the refund policy. And finally, a bunch of colleges I know are scrambling to make tuition insurance available to their parents. And I would read the fine print very carefully if I invested in tuition insurance. Then, what's your proximity to the campus? If something happens, can you get there quickly enough for your own tastes? Do you have a friend or a family member in the area? These are questions parents always ask themselves when their kid is getting ready to go to college, but this year it's really even more important. And then there's the question of your and your family's health. How healthy are you? How healthy are your family members? If your child brings COVID-19 into the household, is that going to put someone in danger? And what is your stress level with the student at home and with the student away? Are there things that you can do to help the family's stress level? Also look to the college for resources. Many colleges have parent programs, and those can be a great way to share ideas with other parents and also to feel a part of the community and have your questions answered. In the end, I think this is really a question of how much faith you have in your child's stage of development. That is, in their ability to protect themselves and make good choices. This might be hard for some kids, but it doesn't have to be. I mean, if you think about it, all they really have to do is social distance and wear a mask. But for some young people, as well as for some adults, as we all know, this is not easy. So what if you decide this is a no-go, my child's not going back to campus? Then what? Should they do college from home? And again, I have 4 pieces of advice. One is if they do college at home, they must have structure. That is, they need a set schedule for every day that includes their coursework, the homework, their socializing with people, getting in touch with faculty, possibly working, possibly doing an internship, getting some exercise, getting sleep, and interacting with the family. That's a lot of stuff to pack into 168 hours in the week, but it's better to have structure than not. Second is students really need a space where they can work quietly, and I know that's really tough in many homes, especially in a place like Manhattan, where I am. Third is they need a computer that can do the job and good Wi-Fi connectivity. And I know a lot of colleges have been issuing laptops and figuring out how to get students Wi-Fi in places where they're having trouble. So many colleges have great programs that help people with that. And finally, I would say that a student should get involved, get into a student organization, become a peer leader, become a tutor, and that will enhance the experience immeasurably. All right, so what if you decide, no, I'm not doing it. I'm not paying all these thousands of dollars for my kid to sit in her room and do online work. All right, fine. The good news is a gap year, whether you're doing it between senior year of high school and freshman year or freshman and sophomore year, is always a good idea. Students in college are completely exhausted physically and emotionally, and having that time off really helps them to get their bearings. I could always tell a student who took a gap year on the first day of orientation. They're more self-assured, they're well-rested, they have left the high school drama very far behind, and they're just in good shape to start for the semester. Okay, so what if you decide on a year off? Then, if your student is a rising freshman, you have to find out how you defer. Colleges are having a lot of people defer, so they are changing the rules pretty quickly, so it pays to find that out. Some colleges are going to require students to reapply because we don't know what is going to happen next year. And if a student is already there, matriculated at the college pursuing a degree, then they should look into how to take a leave of absence. Of course, there's a big question mark about jobs and travel. Maybe getting a job as a barista in a Starbucks is the best one can do, but that still can be very advantageous, very beneficial for the pocketbook, and also to learn all those life skills and job skills that employers hate to have to teach people. Travel might be off the docket for now, but I know a lot of parents who are going to need tutoring and babysitting this fall because they are either working from home or having to go back to the office, and their kids are at home. And so I think tutoring and babysitting is a great idea. Also, our communities, especially our communities in economic downturn, are going to have a lot of volunteer positions available, and I think that's a great way to spend part of the year. Dr. Lutri, do you have anything to add at this point?
Dr. Rinere, I'd like to say you did a great job, and I think you've covered just about everything. The only other thing I would say is that, go by the college's policies. What are they? Do they requiring masks and distancing and all that? I think you've covered. The other thing about, in addition to the family's health, what is the age of the parents and any extended family that the student will be staying with when they return home? Older parents are at a little bit more risk than younger. And nobody's immune, but that's what we know.
Great, thanks. Next, and I hope this brings a little levity into the discussion, but I remember that for the rest of their lives, your child is going to be telling the story of what they did during COVID-19. So it's just an interesting way to have in retrospect in advance. So it's important that you all work together to come to the best possible decision. So now we are both happy to take questions. I'll stop sharing so that we can actually have a conversation. Does anybody have any questions?
Let me unmute everyone.
Surely somebody must have a question.
So the machine is asking us to unmute our own thing.
Yeah.
Okay, so.
It could be that people are asking and we can't hear them.
No, but there's a little pop-up sign that says that Hoboken is asking us for us
To
to
unmute.
unmute ourselves.
Yeah.
Hi, people can unmute themselves if they want to ask, or they can use the chat down below.
So Heidi, would you send your child to college this fall?
No way, not at that price. It's just way too expensive. And let them have some life lessons out there in the world.
What about you, Tom? Would you send your kids to?
Well, my daughter's going to be a senior in high school, and she's going to be going in staggered, 1 out of 3 days with distancing and masks, and I'm okay with it. And I would be okay with a college depending on if I thought they were approaching it in a cautious enough manner, and if they were doing adequate testing, if I liked their policies, and I thought they were nimble enough to change. But having said that, Heidi's got a great point about the money. You might not really get your money's worth, especially if they have to close down. And if they close down, they're going to go online. I don't think they're going to start refunding money because they don't have the money to refund. They're in very bad shape, as you've already stated, Dr. Rinere.
They are in very bad shape, many of them. I mean, the ones like Johns Hopkins and Princeton and Columbia who have huge endowments, they're going to do fine. But the smaller colleges or the colleges that are poorer are really, really struggling, which is why they're furloughing people. And another point is that if a student whether a student goes to college online or in person, the crew of people is going to be skeletal. People are not wanting to go to the campuses, and they are firing a lot of people. And so it's going to be a very different situation on a lot of campuses.
I have a question for you that's more academic and less medical, but let's say the following year, those who want to enter college in fall of 21, I would imagine there's going to be a huge group of people who want to do that, which means that many students are not going to get to the college they want to, or even close.
That's exactly why colleges are changing their deferral policies, because they're not sure what's going to happen next year.
Could you explain what you mean by that?
What I mean is that, so deferrals are done on a rolling basis, right? So college admits a certain number of people. They usually admit the number of people that they can handle in the dorms or in the classrooms. A residential college, it's always the dorms that determine the number. And as deferrals come in, the number of incoming students gets smaller and smaller and smaller for the fall, right? And so that's bad for business. And if you give deferrals to all those kids for the fall, then you have many fewer seats that you can actually admit next year from the new crop of students.
Hey, Monique.
Yes.
So, all right, I can talk about your question in the college's audience of kids attending. So, full disclosure, I'm Monique's husband, but I also am president of the New England Society in the city of New York, and we have a scholarship program to give substantial scholarships, 4-year scholarships to students of New York City who are attending a college in New England. So in the past week, we have just gone through our interviews, and one of the questions that I was able to ask is each of these students, how are they going to, what's their college planning? So I had Connecticut College, Harvard University, Boston University, Dartmouth, MIT. So Harvard is bringing their students, their freshmen, into the dorms, and they're going to do online learning. Connecticut College, which is a relatively small college in the New London area, they are bringing all the students on campus, and they are going to do inline learning. Boston University is allowing these students to defer going on campus for the first semester, and they're actually issuing them a credit for housing. MIT is going full on campus. So that's just my little, oh, and Dartmouth is also going full on campus. So that's my short summary here.
Very wide variety. Does anybody on the call have kids going to college this fall?
Yes, and Monica would like to hear what colleges the audience have kids attending. So guys, you could unmute yourselves, or you could just type it here.
Well, my son just graduated George Washington University in Washington, D.C., and they are fully online for next semester. It doesn't concern him, but just as a point of reference.
Yeah, you can see how colleges in one geographic area are really making very, very different choices. Just as Benedict was saying, all those colleges in New England have made such different choices.
My son went to McGill, and I'm still on their international parents Facebook group, and every single child, they are invited to come back, but the parents are getting stopped at the borders, and some of the parents, sometimes the kids could go through, but the parents have to make a U-turn. Sometimes the parents could drop their kids off in Montreal, but then they cannot even get out of the car and go back to the United States. And some kids, even though they have all the paperwork, are being turned away at the border. So it really depends on which border guard you get and which border you go to. But I can see the Canadians, they don't really want us there. And then when the kids go, they have to quarantine for 14 days.
Richard Curlin has just added that Susquehanna University is going live classes as of today. That could certainly change. Good point.
Hi everyone, my name is Natasha. I work with Heidi at the library and my daughter goes to NYU. She is a sophomore year this year and she's probably taking a gap semester because she's in the global liberal study program and she was supposed to be in Florence this semester.
Oh.
And all the NYU campuses are outside of the United States, open only for the local students. So she won't be able to go there and she'll probably take a semester, gap semester this time.
And what do you think she'll do, Natasha?
We're still actually debating, you know, what to do, if that's the right decision. It's very hard to you know, to think about what's the best way to organize her time and social life and everything that pause brings.
Yeah, that's very hard.
Someone wrote, at Susquehanna University, they require testing before they arrive, but they have not told us what will happen with students who get sick once there. Will they be housed there or will we have to pick them up? That's a really good question.
Somebody should ask. That's a good question to ask. What they would do. Hopefully they have an answer planned out.
I'm sure some poor administrator is working their tail off to get the answer done, to get some contract with a local hospital or find a hotel somewhere. They're very strange times for universities. People are working really, really hard.
Could someone sue a university if a child gets sick?
Well, it's a good question. Many universities are requiring students, and in fact, anybody who comes on campus, to sign a waiver. So I've seen some chatter among parents who were outraged that they had to sign, their kids had to sign a waiver, but if you're a university and you want to protect yourself, it kind of makes sense because you can't control COVID.
If there aren't any questions, I want to ask a longer term question, Monique, based on, it's not my cell phone. My son has been in Thailand since the music stopped and can't get out of there. But he's also graduated a long time ago. But in advising him and his friends, one of the questions I have is, what does this look like 5 or 10 years after you would have normally graduated? What do these different college alternatives look like? And I don't know that it's an easy answer, but is it online? Does it make any difference? Are you better just to take a gap year and not have to worry about how people are perceiving it?
So are you asking how employers are going to view what they did during COVID, or are you asking about the financial loss of delaying?
No, it's more. It's more, I guess it's what the financial people, are looking for, the med schools or any place, they're looking for experience, and you come up and say, I did online, whatever, is that going to be equivalent? Are we better off to have a gap year where that issue doesn't come up? And then in theory, whatever they do for the following year will be closer to 100% of what used to happen.
In theory, yeah. Heidi, can you mute Monica? So I think that everybody's going to have a big pass. Everyone's going to give big passes for whatever people do now. I mean, there are going to be more interesting stories and less interesting stories, but a student who really puts their nose to the grindstone and does some really tough organic chemistry class online, that may be viewed as pretty impressive, right? So it really depends on the student and what they end up doing and how they tell the story. That is their story to tell. And I find that a lot of students don't know how to tell their story in a way that they imagine would be appealing to people who have some power over their graduate school applications or their employment opportunities. And so a lot of the work that I do is coaching students into owning their story and presenting it in a way that makes sense to other generations or people with more experience, for example. So I think it's really in the telling. Now, the other question that I'm interested in is, how is this going to impact this whole generation financially? There are all these studies that show that every semester that you delay getting a degree and entering the job market sets you back X and X% in terms of lifetime earnings. And I think that this generation of students, we're going to see a big dip in, say, 10 years of the earning potential of this generation of students, because so many will have not gone to college right away. That's just my speculation. I'm not an economist.
I have an optimism problem, though, as a parent, that an opportunity like this is so exceptional that whatever your kid decides to do will be forgiven. When regular things start up again, so you could you as a parent can take a bigger chance on his or her judgment and all this other stuff, rather than put them into a situation which could turn into a nightmare for a whole variety of things on your checklist.
I totally agree, Peter. I couldn't agree more. It is a time to take some risks, right? And not the kind of risks where you're going to get sick, the other kind of risks. You know, it could be a fun time to try out all kinds of things. I mean, this is an ideal time to learn a language or an instrument, or I don't know, just throw caution
Yeah,
to
it's
the
a
wind.
great time to have a lot of fun by yourself at home. A lot of fun things you can do like that.
Oh, Tom.
Actually, there are lots of places you can go and travel halfway decently outside the country. You know,
Is there?
places that are doing a pretty good job of it, if they'll let Americans in. Thank you, Mr. President.
And if you want to take a flight to get there.
Right.
Are there any more questions? No? Okay, so I just want to thank Monique, Dr. Monique Rinere and Dr. Thomas Lutri. Thank you so much. This was so interesting and thorough, and you really answered a lot of questions, and I hope you help people make decisions, big, expensive decision. And I really, really appreciate this. This was really, really excellent program. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Heidi, for having us.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.